Maurice de Vlaminck was a pivotal figure in early 20th century French painting, known for his contributions to the Fauvist movement. His vibrant use of color and expressive brushstrokes helped define the style that came to be associated with Fauvism, which emphasized emotional intensity and abstraction over realistic representation. Vlaminck's work not only contributed to the radical changes in the art world during his time, but also left a lasting legacy that influenced future generations of artists. Maurice de Vlaminck was born on April 4, 1876, in Paris, France, to a family deeply rooted in the arts. His father was a Flemish violinist, and his mother a pianist, both of whom instilled in him a love for music from a young age. This artistic environment cultivated Vlaminck's creativity, but it was not painting that initially drew him in. In fact, Vlaminck's path to becoming an artist was somewhat unconventional. As a child, Vlaminck spent much of his time around music and literature. He pursued violin lessons, showing promise as a musician, and his parents encouraged him to consider a career in music. However, young Vlaminck had other ambitions. In his late teens, he was drawn to cycling, a passion that led him to work as a professional cyclist for several years. He also served in the military for a brief period. During this time, his interest in painting began to develop, although it remained a secondary pursuit. In 1896, Vlaminck married Suzanne Burley, and the couple settled in Chatou, a small town near Paris. To support his family, Vlaminck worked various jobs, including teaching violin lessons and writing novels. His interest in painting continued to grow, however, and in 1900, his life took a dramatic turn when he met fellow artist André Derain on a train ride to Chatou. This meeting marked the beginning of a long and fruitful collaboration between the two painters, who would go on to shape the development of Fauvism. Maurice de Vlaminck's career as a painter began in earnest in the early 1900s. In the company of Derain and Henri Matisse, Vlaminck became one of the leading figures of the Fauvist movement. Fauvism, which was named after the French word fauve, meaning wild beasts, was a revolutionary approach to painting that emphasized bold, non-naturalistic colors and raw, emotional expression. The movement represented a rebellion against traditional academic painting, which prioritized precise realism and subdued tones. Vlaminck's early work was heavily influenced by Vincent van Gogh, whose intense emotional expression and use of color resonated deeply with him. Vlaminck was particularly drawn to Van Gogh's use of impasto, a technique that involves applying thick layers of paint to the canvas to create a textured, almost sculptural effect. This technique became a hallmark of Vlaminck's own style, which was characterized by vigorous brushstrokes and vibrant, saturated colors. In 1905, Vlaminck participated in the now famous Salon d'Automne in Paris, where his work, along with that of Matisse, Derain, and others, was exhibited to the public for the first time. The boldness of their colors and the perceived wildness of their brushwork shocked critics and viewers alike, earning them the nickname Le Fauve. Vlaminck's paintings from this period, such as Restaurant de la Machine à Bougival, 1905, are notable for their explosive use of color and dynamic compositions, which convey a sense of spontaneity and passion. Although Fauvism was a short-lived movement, lasting only a few years, it had a profound impact on the trajectory of modern art. For Vlaminck, this period was one of intense creative energy, and he quickly established himself as a major force in the Parisian avant-garde. His use of color and emotional intensity set him apart from many of his contemporaries and laid the foundation for his later work. By 1907, the Fauvist movement had begun to dissolve as its leading figures moved in different artistic directions. Vlaminck, too, began to shift away from the bright, expressive colors that had characterized his earlier work. He grew increasingly interested in the works of Paul Cézanne, whose more structured approach to composition and form had a profound influence on him. Cézanne's emphasis on the geometric structure of objects led Vlaminck to adopt a more restrained and somber palette, and his brushstrokes became more controlled. Vlaminck's work from this period reflects a growing sense of introspection and melancholy. His landscapes, such as the Seine at Chatou, 1908, are dominated by muted tones of brown, grey, and blue, creating a mood of solitude and reflection. The energetic, vibrant colours of his Fauvist years gave way to a more subdued and contemplative style, although his expressive brushwork remained a constant feature of his art. During this time, Vlaminck also began to explore new subjects in his work, including still lifes and portraits. His still lifes, often featuring simple objects like fruit, bottles, or flowers, reflect his interest in Cézanne's approach to form and structure. His portraits, while less numerous, demonstrate a keen ability to capture the psychological depth of his subjects through his use of colour and texture. By the 1920s, Maurice de Vlaminck had achieved widespread recognition as a major figure in the French art world. However, as the avant-garde continued to evolve, Vlaminck found himself increasingly at odds with the direction that modern art was taking. He was deeply critical of the Cubist movement, which was gaining prominence at the time, and he rejected the intellectualism that he believed was overtaking the emotional core of painting. Vlaminck's distaste for Cubism and abstract art led him to distance himself from many of his contemporaries, and he began to focus more on traditional landscapes and rural scenes. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Vlaminck's work became increasingly focused on the French countryside, particularly the region around the Seine River. His landscapes from this period, such as Autumn Landscape, 1925, are characterized by their rich, earthy tones and a sense of nostalgia for the rural way of life. Vlaminck's love for the French landscape is evident in these works, which often depict quiet, pastoral scenes with little human presence. His brushwork remained expressive, but his use of colour became more restrained and naturalistic. During the later years of his career, Vlaminck continued to explore the themes of solitude and introspection that had marked his earlier work. He became increasingly reclusive, spending much of his time in the small village of Ray-la-Gadelière, where he lived with his family. Vlaminck's work from this period reflects a deep connection to the natural world and a desire to capture the essence of the landscape in all its changing moods. Maurice de Vlaminck's contribution to the Fauvist movement and modern art cannot be overstated. His bold use of colour and his commitment to emotional expression helped to redefine the possibilities of painting in the early 20th century. While his later work became more traditional in subject and style, Vlaminck remained a fiercely independent artist throughout his life, always staying true to his own vision. Although Vlaminck never achieved the same level of fame as some of his contemporaries, such as Matisse or Picasso, his influence on the development of modern art is undeniable. His work paved the way for later movements, such as Expressionism, which similarly emphasized the emotional and psychological power of color and form. Vlaminck's legacy can also be seen in the works of later artists who sought to capture the raw, untamed beauty of the natural world. In addition to his painting, Vlaminck was also an accomplished writer. He published several novels and essays throughout his life, many of which reflect his views on art, society, and the role of the artist. His writing, like his painting, is marked by a deep passion for self-expression and a desire to challenge the status quo. Maurice de Vlaminck passed away on October 11, 1958, at the age of 82. He left behind a body of work that continues to inspire and challenge viewers with its emotional intensity and bold use of colour. While he may have spent much of his later life in relative obscurity, Vlaminck's influence on the art world remains profound, and his contributions to the Fauvist movement continue to be celebrated today.